Hi guys, welcome back to another episode in my Zelda line. Today we're going to look at the handheld games in the series. I decided to split the games up between the handheld and the console just because there's so many of them in total. I figured it'd be easier this way. We're going to discuss games from the original Game Boy all the way up currently to the 3DS and kind of give you my impressions of what I think of them. Okay, starting off with the Game Boy, we have Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening, and on the right, that's Link's Awakening DX. Link's Awakening is one of my favorite games, especially on handhelds. I love the way that it basically runs like a Link to the Past. The adventure is solid, the gameplay is solid, the story is really unique with the Windfish. Probably one of my favorite Zelda games of all time, to tell you the truth. The DX version was a re-release with everything redone in color. There were some added things in it as well. One of them, most notably, was a dungeon that was all in color. It was shorter, but really unique for the time. You didn't see a lot of games re-released back then with extra content. Next up, we have Legend of Zelda, Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. These games were released at the same time, and these were games that used a password system that you could enter into the next game and kind of continue on your adventure. Pretty unique at the time. These games were actually developed by Capcom with the help from Nintendo, obviously. I think this was the first time that the Zelda franchise was kind of farmed out to another team. These are really solid adventures though. They're very different from one another. Really good if you can get your hands on these copies. They're getting a little harder to find, a little more rare out in the wild. Next, we're going to move on to the Game Boy Advance. These games were taken from the classic NES series, where they took games from the Nintendo Entertainment System that were popular and basically ported them over to the Game Boy Advance. And here we have the original Legend of Zelda and the Legend of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Pretty much 100% faithful port from the Nintendo Entertainment System. Really good games if you've never played them. It was really fun at the time to be able to play them portably, and they still hold up today. Next up, we have The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past with the Four Swords. This is a port of A Link to the Past from the Super Nintendo. Basically a one-to-one port again, remaining really faithful to what the Super Nintendo brought. This had an additional bonus, the Four Swords kind of adventure, that if you linked together 4 Game Boys, you could play basically the Four Swords adventure. It was really unique for the time. A little tough to find 4 players with the cords to be able to do it, but it was a unique idea at the time, and it eventually led to the Four Swords creation on the GameCube. Next up, we have Legend of Zelda, The Minish Cap. Once again, this was made by Capcom in conjunction with Nintendo. This is a lot of people's favorite handheld Zelda, The Minish Cap. Very unique, nice gameplay where Link can shrink down into a smaller version of himself and fight enemies in a different way. The puzzles were really good in this game. The story was really good in this game. It's just a very solid all-around game, especially considering it wasn't done by Nintendo themselves. Okay, now we're going to move on to the DS line of Legend of Zelda games, starting with the Phantom Hourglass. These games were really unique for the series at the time, considering that they didn't use your typical D-pad or analog stick to move your character around. Everything was done by stylus. When I first heard of it, I wasn't sure if I was going to like these games, but I really did. You get used to using the stylus pretty quickly for combat, but some of the puzzles in here were so well done because of the fact that you could use a stylus to draw different things and to mark down on your map. I really like these adventures. Next up is Zelda Spirit Tracks. Again, this follows kind of in the same line of what the Phantom Hourglass did. Similar controls, similar ideas as far as puzzles, different mechanics. This time you're controlling another player at times to help you through puzzles, which was pretty ingenious. Very good. If you liked the Phantom Hourglass, you're most likely going to really enjoy Spirit Tracks as well. The next game I have here, it's not a mainline Zelda entry, but this is freshly picked Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land for the Nintendo DS. It's a spin-off featuring Tingle, obviously. It's more of a puzzle-based game. This one is a Japanese exclusive, so if you don't have a Japanese Nintendo DS, you cannot play it. It's an interesting game. It's interesting to have. I really like the cover art. It's kind of wacky and Japanese, but it's nice to have in the collection just because you don't see it around very often. Continuing on, we're going to go into the Nintendo 3DS line now, starting with The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D. So obviously a remake of Ocarina of Time from the Nintendo 64. This is upgraded with, better visuals, enhanced for the 3DS's 3D capability. But the gameplay itself is pretty much essentially the same. You know what to expect. Made it a little easier for swapping items with the bottom screen being available. Not much else to say. It's your Ocarina of Time, one of the best games ever made. Next is Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D, the game that everybody on the planet was asking for, and I think that's why they did it. Again, like the N64 version, it's Majora's Mask, upgraded, better visuals, 3D capability if you so choose. Again, it's Majora's Mask. If you were a huge fan of it on the Nintendo 64, you're going to love it on the Nintendo 3DS. Here we have Legend of Zelda, A Link Between Worlds. So this is supposed to be a continuation of A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. It's done with a similar art style, or it's supposed to mimic the art style of A Link to the Past. Very good game, very unique for the time. This one used the 3D visuals of the 3DS very well. It also employed the mechanic of Link being able to go into the wall as a painting, which made for some really unique puzzles. I enjoy this game. It is different. The one thing that I wasn't a huge fan of was the rental of the items. But other than that, the gameplay itself and the story is fantastic. This is another spin-off series, obviously starting on the Wii U as well. This is Hyrule Warriors Legends. So again, from the Dynasty Warriors series, continuing on with different Nintendo characters and their roles. This is a very good game. It doesn't run the greatest on the 3DS. If you have the new Nintendo 3DS, it definitely runs much better. The game itself is not super deep. It's not like your traditional Zelda game. It's a fighting game in the loosest sense, where you're taking on hundreds of enemies, but it is fun. If that's what you're looking for, is just mindless fun like that, this is the game for you. And finishing off my 3DS games, this is Zelda Triforce Heroes. I would say this game is a little more puzzle-based than combat-based, like most Zelda games. It allows you to control up to 3 players at once. You can also play with 2 other friends at the same time to try and get through different stages, try and figure out the puzzles. But you can also control everybody by yourself. It's a good game. It wasn't my favorite Zelda spin-off. I enjoyed Four Swords much more than this, but it was good for what it was supposed to be. So that's a look at my Legend of Zelda handheld games, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I will go through my console games as well. If you like this video, please hit the like button below, leave any comments that you want, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks! So that's a look at my Legend of Zelda handheld games, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I will go through my